Hey, everybody. I just wanted to give you an overview again of these two documents that I gave you earlier. I think your sub is handing them out in physical form so that you can have them that way as well. But there's also this document. So I'm going to explain to you how these connect right now. So the first thing you want to do is write the prompt down. And as you write, you want to underline exactly what it's asking you to do. Is it asking you to compare? Or is it asking you to contrast? For this one, you are going to the DBQ in the back of the unit, and it has to do with gender roles in Japan and Argentina. Don't get too stressed out about having to know everything about what's happening, because with a DBQ, most of the answers are in the document, so you have to read them really carefully. Go through and for each source on the document, make sure you circle it and try to figure out every single step around here. Be careful about this part. Most of you tend to just fill in something about, okay, who the author is and maybe why you think that's important. But it's really asking, how is their view basically influencing what they are writing about? So if it's a European perspective, explain what words specifically in the document make you think that. The more that you have filled out here, I guarantee you the better your essay is. So this is going to be day one, is basically reading through all the documents, annotate them really well. Any questions you have, go ahead and write them on, and we'll talk about them tomorrow. I am going to give this to you on Friday instead of Thursday. So we'll have another day in class to discuss, this part down here if you have any other questions. But I really want you to try to fill all of this out today. After you have this all done, hopefully you can kind of think about, okay, what are three specific examples that I can say, or three specific ways in which gender has changed in these two places in the world. You will need to go back to the document and look at what's happening with gender in Latin America. So look at the Latin America chapter, review what's going on and what changes are there and why they're happening. This is a time when people are basically getting rid of the idea of absolute monarchy, and they are wanting to be able to have more representation in the form of usually a constitution. So one of the things, just to give you an example of what you're doing down here, one of them, that may be one idea that you have. And I'm not saying this is correct or not. I actually don't have the exact prompt in front of me. But if, for example, you're saying, okay, legal codes are changing in the form of a constitution or whatever, you need to then write which documents are they. Maybe it's document 4 and document 7, for example, that talk about that. And remember, it's asking about two different places. But even though you're comparing the two, you still need to make sure you're breaking it down, specifically discuss what's going on in Argentina, specifically what's going on in Japan. And then over here, this is the part where I have a document that I linked here to help you figure out, what do I need to write in each paragraph? You should not write full sentences here. This is where you're just breaking down, okay, how can I give some analysis to each one of these documents? So document 4, right? Explain it, maybe give some more context. And then you want to make sure that analysis is complete. And that's where I'm going to show you right now how to go for help there. Once you have your 3 ideas about what's changing regarding gender, then you can write a really good thesis up here. You need to also make sure that you are giving a roadmap for the essay, which means basically just saying, okay, one of the ways in which they can be compared is this way. Another way was that way. But you summarize basically, what you were about to talk about throughout the essay. You don't want to go into the nitty-gritty. You don't want to give specifics up here, but you do need to have something that is more than just an answer to the question. And you also need to give context for this, right? This is where your context will come in on the introduction. This will all turn into your intro, obviously. Then you're going to have this to do. So once you finish this video right now, actually, no, never mind. I can go on to another window. I used to have to stop it before going to another tab. Now I can show you this part. So when you're looking at the body paragraph, right, a summary sentence, you have to have a summary sentence explaining, okay, this is what they have in common, or this is how they contrast, or this is a way that they have changed, depending on what the prompt is. Then you need to give a little bit of context about why they've changed. Background knowledge is very important. So you need to go back through and do your research. You're not putting that all in the introduction. The exemplification can basically be from a direct quote. And then for each, that's when we write about paragraphs being sexy, the E is really the evidence, right? Maybe it's better to just call it evidence instead of exemplify for the purpose of a DBQ. But it's what is one example of evidence from these quotes that you can say backs up your claim here, right? Then you're going to, and it doesn't have to be a direct quote right here. You could say, Jones in document 3 believes this. Then you want to give a little bit of context, explain why it's relevant, but the analysis part is the part that you guys have more trouble with. And this is where you want to pick a couple things to answer. So about the evidence, you're talking again about whatever it was you just quoted. What is it about that quote that is drawing you to believe that, something is changing and what's going on? And so just to help give you a head start, some things to think about might be, what is the author assuming is true? What are some conclusions that they are giving for why things are changing or whatever's happening? What are the consequences to those assumptions? And how does this relate to other points of view? You might want to compare it to other documents, right? In contrast to document 7 above, this is what they say. And also, what would critics say, right? Maybe it's very obvious that this is a really slanted point of view from a specific perspective. And so what other things do we have to think about? And then you want a second quote. This is your second document, right? So a second part of it might be the first, the same another quote out of the same one. But what you really want to try to do is find a second one, because you have to use up all of the documents throughout this essay. So in some of them, you actually will have 3. Remember, it's the rule 2 to 3, 2 to 3 different parts that are going to go into your thesis, which, 2 or 3 different examples here. But then within those paragraphs, right, for this, you have 2 to 3 different quotes as well. For the conclusion, just tie it all together. That's called a synthesis. You want to kind of sift through the entire thing and explain, okay, why overall is this important to look at in history? It's something that is going to impact later events. So even though we haven't studied the later events, that World War I is coming up. All these countries are starting to compete and influence each other. So anything that you can say here that kind of gives more of a perspective as far as what you've said all throughout the paper. Okay, so this is basically just the paragraph outline for how to start breaking up this part. So when you get to this part over here, just click this link and just go back and try to just find as many clues as you can throughout all of these documents for what you need to do. Now, one of the little things that I have not really counted yet is that you need to start to think about pulling in another piece of evidence that you can use that is not in the documents. And you may want to just add that. Maybe that's something I could put on here at the end. Additional evidence, right? So if you can pull that into any one of these, that would count as the extra point. Okay, so that's where you should be for tomorrow, is just hip the whole thing. Write your main ideas down here, and that's what I will look at when you first come into class tomorrow. We will have time to talk about it tomorrow and look at where you're going to go from here. But you're not going to be writing this until Friday. You will need to start learning it all, because I'm not going to let you use notes this time. But the whole point is, once you go through and do this, for tonight, look it over. It should be pretty easy to just take out your pen and just start to write about everything you've done. You may want to just quickly take a quick thumbnail outline and outline what you remember having written here. And again, after 2 days, it's not going to be as hard as you think it is now. Okay.